and Bess. This weapon was used throughout the 18th century. It starts coming into use about 1722 by the British military. It's still in use by them by the 1830s, making it the longest serving firearm in the history of the planet. This weapon had seen service in the War of Jenkins' Ear, the French and Indian War, the American Revolution, the War of 1812, and even into the Civil War, the American Civil War. Young men would grab their grandfather's musket off of the mantle and go out to battle with these. It's a very effective weapon, even though its accuracy is a little bit limited. It's accurate to about 75 yards, though it can be deadly up to 300 yards away. Being smooth bore, that meaning it does not have rifling down the barrel, it is not a rifle, it's not particularly accurate. Rifles put spin on the projectile. I think in basketball you put backspin on a shot, makes it more accurate. When you throw a football, you put spin on it. If you have spin, it makes it more accurate. However, it also takes longer to load. Rifles during the early colonial period in Georgia took about a minute to fire, load and fire. This could fire about 3 rounds a minute. So the commands weren't exactly ready, aim, fire, ready, present, fire, because they would literally just point it in the direction of the enemy. However, the idea behind it is that you would have a group of 10, 50, 100, 1,000 men all lining up shoulder to shoulder in different ranks, and they would be given an order to fire in a volley. So all of that lead would head downrange at once. It would be terrifying if you were downrange and you hear fire, or if you were Oglethorpe fighting against the Spanish when they'd hear fuego, the Spanish firing back at them. So one part of this weapon is that it's called a flintlock. This is the lock, this is the stock, and this is the barrel. Lock, stock, and barrel, meaning you have a whole musket. Within here, you have a small pan. And in this pan is put a little black powder. When you pull it back and you pull the trigger, this piece of flint, a type of river stone, strikes steel. Flint on steel creates a spark. And one more try. Poof! That little poof is called the flash in the pan. You may have even heard the modern term flash in the pan to mean something that happens with a lot of pomp, but it disappears very quickly. That little flash there is meant to send fire through the touch hole into the side of the barrel. So if I put a little powder into the pan, as I did before, that flash is going to cause a fire to go down the barrel. Why would that happen? Because the rest of the charge actually goes directly in. Now, if you were going to join the British military, around that time, they would open your mouth, look inside, make sure you had at least a few opposable teeth. Many people would lose their teeth kind of early on. You had to tear your paper cartridges with your teeth. Couldn't hold your musket like this in the battle and tear it with your hands. Couldn't gum it open. You had to do that, and so that was part of your service. So, that little paper cartridge has a pre-measured amount of black powder. Black powder or gunpowder is very explosive, very volatile. In that little paper cartridge would have been a musket ball, too. That musket ball is about 3/4 of an inch, or 75 caliber. That is a big piece of lead flying down range. Oh, yeah. I used the ramrod to pack the gunpowder, the black powder, and presumably a musket ball, right by that touch hole. So now this weapon is locked, loaded, ready to fire. As I was saying earlier, it's not particularly accurate. If you were being tested, if you've ever heard the term marksman, it comes from the age of muskets. A marksman was able to hit a 6-foot by 6-foot board about 50 yards away. If he could hit it a number of times, he made his mark and was considered a marksman. But the problem is, once that musket ball bounces out of the barrel, and that's what it does, just kind of bing, 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 if it hits to the left as it's exiting, it's going to start to veer to the right. If it hits to the right, veer to the left. If somehow it manages to go straight, it'll go straight on. You could put this in a vise and fire it 10 times, and you'd have 10 different locations where the musket ball would land at 100 or 200 yards. The further out, the more it spreads. So, again, ready, present, fire was your command. This is not a gun sight. This is where you would affix a bayonet. Because after a while, you'd fire and you'd advance, fire and advance. Eventually you'd get so close to where it would become hand-to-hand combat. This would become a pike. And that was when things got very deadly and dangerous because you were up close with literally a spear in your hand. So it's ready to fire. Anybody mind if I fire out here?
Very good.
All right, I'm going to say ready, present, fire. When I say ready, I want you to cover your ears with the palms of your hands. It's a bit loud. I don't want it to hurt your ears. You're going to be firing these for many years to come. Hearing didn't last very long in the colonial days. If you were in the militia or the military, you might have pretty decent hearing until about 25 or 30. So here we go. Ready, present, fire. And we had a misfire. A misfire.
Making me take a picture for no
misfire
reason.
is when a little bit of residue gets on the flint here. I've fired it a couple times already today. If it doesn't make a spark, it doesn't light the powder. That's what happened. So about 1 out of every 7 shots during that age would misfire. In fact, there were some days where both sides of the forces would actually decide not to have a battle there in that day. It was too humid or it was too rainy. All of their powder was going to be rendered inert. So here we go. I'm going to try one more time. Ready, present, fire.
Nice.
Man, I was going to take a
I have
video
a little
too.
bit of powder left, so yes, let's fire one more time. Now, you could fire, it does hurt a little bit, yeah. You could fire, you were expected to fire, about 3 rounds per minute, so every 20 seconds. Soldiers would have an elaborate drill they would go through, and 3 a minute was considered standard. However, if you were particularly skilled, as were the Georgia Rangers that Noble Jones was a part of, or later during the American Revolution, the German Hessian military or mercenaries that came, they could fire 4 rounds per minute. Terrifying. So whereas the regular British military would fire in advance, or the American army fighting against the Hessian mercenaries, fire in advance, the Hessians would fire and retreat a little bit, fire and retreat a little bit, maximizing that 4-shot advantage. I can only fire it about 2.5 times a minute. So once again, the powder goes down the barrel, rammer withdrawn. No misfires. One more time. Ready, present, fire.
Dang.
That was loud.
You missed the burn.
Wasn't loud. You just listen to too loud of music.